Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be back here in London. Nice to be able to shake people's hands. As you would appreciate, my presentation today poses the question, how can the mining industry better resource tomorrow? The short answer is that it will need to change fundamentally if it is to keep the world going at all, let alone improve it. The current focus on the metals required for the transition to renewable energy has led to an overdue recognition of mining's critical importance to economic development in general. What concerns me, however, is we always get obsessed with one particular issue. And today, as we've just heard, we're obsessed with the battery-operated future foreseen by the rich nations. The poor, as usual, seem to have been an afterthought. If we were to build a better future for all, and not just for some, we need to accept that uplifting those who live in poverty, in other words, the majority of our fellow citizens of the world, it is important as reversing the way the developed nations pollute our planet. I hope to show you this morning how responsible mining is critical for the achievement of both those goals. Please take note of this cautionary statement, which can also be found on our website. Mining has been a key enabler of development since the Iron Age. It has historically been the foundation of economic growth and diversification in many countries, and today it is a critical driver advancing the many parts of the world that are rich in natural resources but poor in many other ways. Responsible mining creates infrastructures where none exist, uses abundant solar and hydro resources to generate power, builds schools and hospitals, protects and improves the environment, and genuinely cares for its neighboring communities. It's fair to say, however, that social responsibility has not always been a priority for all mining companies, who have sometimes exploited their host country's mineral endowment while paying their taxes and nothing more. Back in my Randgold days, I saw that this was not a sustainable business model, and so I introduced a partnership concept which today is used throughout Barrick's global projects and operations. Simply put, we believe that the owners of the resources we develop, the host countries and their people, should have a fair share of the economic benefits of the mines and what those mines generate. This gives us a social license to operate, which is at least as important as the statutory permits one needs to mine. Let me give you just one example of this philosophy in practice. In a remote part of Pakistan, we are currently developing what will be one of the world's largest copper and gold mines. We own 50% and will operate the mine. Pakistan, through state-owned entities, holds 25%, and the Balochistan province, which hosts the mine, has effectively been given a funded 25%. It's worth noting that the majority of countries with significant mineral and metal exports have developing economies which are heavily reliant on mining. How you can see mining's contribution to these economies as a percentage of total exports. But looking ahead, there's a problem. Gold, as with most other metals, production is plateauing through a lack of quality projects to replace depleted reserves. And companies are using a higher gold price and other metal prices to mine lower grade ore, which is not a sustainable practice. While copper production is expected to increase in the near term, supply is still expected to fall far short of even the most conservative forecasts. And again, the same goes for most other minerals and metals. It's not that the world is running out of metals and minerals. There are still abundant resources. We just haven't been looking for them. Major gold discoveries have declined from 180 in the 1990s to 42 in 2010s, largely because of reduced exploration budgets. My mantra has always been that the only way the mining industry can create real value is through discovery and development, a view not shared by the many who prefer the merger and acquisition route, which is rarely value accretive unless followed by an increase in the commodity price post-transaction. Copper's discovery record mirrors that of gold, as do other metals and minerals, declining from 114 in the 1990s to just 19 in the 2010s. If mining companies are not prepared to invest in themselves through exploration, why should others? As I mentioned earlier, the industry has been relying on the higher gold price to unlock lower grade reserves. When the price drops, it goes into shock, and its already undervalued equities slump. The world still hosts an enormous gold and copper endowment as shown on this map, as is the case with other minerals and metals. You'll notice that the most prolific ones are in Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, and the Asia-Pacific region, and in places where the big miners have traditionally feared to tread, but where Barrick operates profitably. It astounds me that to this day there are some who will rather plunge headlong into the depths of seabed mining than deal with the well-known and manageable risks around terrestrial mining presented by developing countries. There's no doubt in my mind that responsible mining can change countries, drive economies, and improve the lives of people living there. And gold mining is no exception, as shown in the slide. In 2022, the most recent year for which we have records, the members of the World Gold Council operating in 34 countries contributed close to $58 billion to the social and economic development of its host countries. I don't have the numbers for copper mining, but its contribution is estimated to be larger than that of gold by several orders of magnitude. Its strategic necessity for a changing world is well understood by most. And the same goes for iron ore and nickel and all the rare earths. people talk so glibly about critical minerals. But actually in mining, any mineral or metal that has a market is critical. When I talk about the difference mining makes and could continue to make, I mean responsible mining, a proper concern for sustainability is the cornerstone of that responsibility and has long been embedded in every aspect of Barrick's business. I often caution against this obsession about short-termism and the damage it can do when we confuse promoters with lithium miners, for example. Our sustainability strategy integrates the challenges presented by poverty, climate change, and biodiversity loss. And it's aligned with the United Nations Sustainability Development Goals. And I would suggest that those goals are the goals that should drive us in our vision, in our strategy for a better world for all, rather than this obsession about little nationalist-driven objectives that don't take into account the rest of the world. We can make sure that all the cars in California are operated by batteries, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is not going to solve a planet for our future generations. In conclusion, I'd like to say that in order for the mining industry to help build a better world, we, as miners, developers, investors, prospectors, we have to invest in our own future, in creating value through exploration, in education and skills development, in uplifting our communities, in forging mutually beneficial local partnerships, in bringing infrastructure to remote regions, and protecting and improving our operating environments. Perhaps most important, we must ensure that our businesses are forward-facing and fully equipped to deal effectively with the many changes and challenges presented by a rapidly changing world. In short, for us to resource for tomorrow, we have to do a lot better at exploration, discovery, and development of new mines. And we need to do this through partnering with our host countries and ensuring that their people and their economies are developed as well. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mark, are you up for taking a couple of questions
Sure.
from the audience? Excellent.
Absolutely.
Maybe we have a microphone, colleagues. If anybody's got a question, please raise your hand, and Andrew can bring around the mic. While he selects a first participant, Mark, maybe I can ask a question. You talked about the challenge of short-termism. Can you help me understand what that means to somebody in your position? Right, so I mentioned at the top these sort of like long-term 30, 40-year energy scenarios, even reaching out to 2100. Very kind of easy to talk about in principle. But the near-term economic incentives are just operating on a much higher frequency. So how do you see us being able to bridge short-term need to show value to stakeholders, to partner with governments, to deliver value to communities, at the same time we're building an adequate supply chain for the rest of the century?
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and our Assistant Secretary of State, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, touched on it a little bit. And that is, how do we make our developing world investable? And how do we attract investment into mining? Because everyone looks at instant gratification. And that really is completely at odds to the way miners should work. And that is, we allocate capital for the long term, we develop long-term assets, and it takes time for those discoveries and development projects to come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And I think the key here is, more importantly than driving another wave of promotion, I've always said, when you get government-to-government support, I go back to the 90s when I started. There was a big drive. You remember Brian Mulrooney out of Canada drove the forgiveness of highly indebted nations, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. And really, the international institutions invested in uplifting skills. And those countries across sub-Saharan Africa really reinvented themselves. But that, again, has been destroyed because the developed world now looks like those developing countries back in the 1990s. They've got debt multiple times their GDP, and they can't afford to support anyone, although they say they do. Mm-hmm. And we've neglected our ability to support and invest in the emerging markets. The same goes with Central Asia, the same goes with South America. And so I think it's a holistic approach. And that's why I believe that the Sustainable Development Goals is really the real global strategy that captures everything and really delivers something that is sustainable for the future. And we talk so much about sustainability, but we neglect it equally.
Interesting. We've got a question over here. If you don't mind introducing yourself, sir, and then questions are typically a short proposition followed by a sentence that goes up at the end.
Hi, my name's Mark Ward with B2 Gold. My question to you, Mark, and congratulations on a fantastic speech. I really enjoyed that. But what was going through my mind was, it seems like your business model requires giving up more revenue at the end of the day for developing partners, for local people. What's your strategy for selling that to the investors, your key investors?
So, Mark, it's very easy. If you don't, you end up with nothing. The key, and I always say, the most important stakeholder in any mining endeavor is the host country and its people. They take far more risk than investors take in us. And anyway, when you screw up that, you end up with nothing, and your investors end up with nothing as well. So it's an easy equation for me to deal with.
And then I believe one here, ma'am.
Hi, Mark. Cecilia Joffre from Isometrics. I always enjoy your clarity of thought and communication and the African examples. You spoke about the social aspects not always being clearly understood by other companies in the gold mining or any other mining industry. What, in your opinion, are the mechanisms that either the industry or governments could bring to bear to make that understanding a reality?
And so I think we all talk about transparency and engagement and partnerships, and we don't practice it. We don't even appreciate what it means. We just say it's good. It's like ESG. You've seen how ESG has failed everyone, the so-called ESG compliance. And today we have compliance run by AI. So anybody can write a report, publish it, and it becomes a damning cross on somebody's reputation. We don't hold people to account. We don't engage with people. And most importantly, the developed world no longer has real relationships with the developing world. We summons everyone to COP28. We summons them to the United Nations. We summons them to Davos. We give them a one-week lecture. Meanwhile, we do deals on the side, and we send everyone home, and none of us on this planet has met any of the objectives that have been set by those gatherings. So it needs a remake. That's what I believe. And it needs to start by recognizing how important it is to uplift our host countries. And I'll give you another example, DRC, cobalt. How do you rationalize to the people of DRC that you come in there and you take their cobalt or their lithium so that you can make sure that your cars in California are going to be clean? And you can't demonstrate what you're going to do to change the southern part of DRC where you find those metals. So that is the big challenge. And it's not difficult. I just give you some examples. California was built on gold. Witwatersrand in South Africa was built on gold. You know, there's many, many examples around the world. Iron ore, the parts of the Australia. And we've managed to use those metals to develop our countries. But somehow, when we go to emerging markets, we lecture those countries saying, you should be very grateful, we're going to come and invest in your country, and we'll build you some schools, etc., but we won't really change the way you live.
Can we please give a warm round of appreciation to Mark? We can fit one more in? All right, I'm sorry I jumped the gun. We have one more question, Mark. If you don't.
Thank you. Mark, Jim Caravala, Off-World. How can we bring disruptive technology into the mining sector that is traditionally resistant to change, but that is desperately needed for net zero?
You know, I think, first of all, what is net zero? Because, you know, disruptive technology is like religion. Some people believe it works instantly, some people don't. The point is, what is net zero? And how do we get to net zero when more than 50% of the people that live on this planet live in poverty? We can't do it. Those people, they are only focused on surviving another 24 hours, and in some cases 12. So we need to change this world. And sure, technology, I mean, our most automated mine is in Congo, so it's definitely doable. It's not Nevada, it's the Congo. So this idea of, you know, us from the developed world can come and save everyone with a bit of AI and some technology, it doesn't work. What it needs is investment, embracement, partnerships, real education, real understanding, real development.
Brilliant.
That's it.
Glad.
Thank you.
All right, this time,